yourself a cold one.
They strike 'em, huh?
And listen to Ross Tucker break down the top college prospects on another tasty edition of The College Draft.
Yeah, it's Daddy Soda time here on the College Draft Podcast, presented, of course, by DraftKings. The crown is yours. We have games, by the way, in a month. I think that they're like in a month. The week 0 games. I know CBS has Stanford at Hawaii. Frank Reich coaching the Stanford Cardinal. Andrew Luck is the general manager. So hard to believe we're only a month away from actual college football games that count, which means my guy Emory Hunt, and maybe me from time to time, right here on the show, will be making picks against the spread as it relates to college football. But first, we still need to make sure that you're all aware of the top prospects in all of these conferences going into the season, right? Have a baseline of who the top guys are so that when you're watching college football this season, you can have an idea for who the top guys are and kind of gives you a jump start on the 2026 NFL Draft. You can always check us out on social media. Speaking of watching, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL on social media, the former NFL offensive lineman. You can check us out at Ross Tucker Pod. The star of the show, who I feel like every couple weeks I see somebody in the media or an agent or someone giving him his flowers, understanding what he's done to get to this point and the work he puts in. The always outstanding Emory Hunt at FBall Game Plan on Twitter, Football Game Plan on YouTube, and then, of course, I still think you got 6 to 8 more weeks where you can go ahead and get footballgameplan.com/2025 draft guide and use it as a handy dandy NFL training camp and preseason guide, because that's who you're going to see in most of these preseason games is the rookies that Emory wrote about that your other draft analyst doesn't even know about or didn't talk about, basically. At FBall Game Plan. But again, it's footballgameplan.com/2025 draft guide. I'm just looking at this, Emory, and man, we might not even have enough time to get to all the guys in the SEC. This might end up being 2 episodes. We are going to do an episode on the top group of 5 prospects, and then we'll do an episode on the others, right? FCS, D2, D3, NAIA, JUCO, because Emory's all over it. But there's a lot to get to just in the SEC, and we should start with the quarterbacks because they've got at least 3 guys that people believe are first-round caliber prospects in Arch Manning, Garrett Nussmeier, and LaNorris Sellers, and all of them very unique, very different. I'll let you start, Emory, with whichever guy you want to start with.
How about we start with the best pro prospect in the SEC, Ross? That's Taylen Green out of Arkansas at the quarterback position. When you watch him play, Ross, you may see glimpses of Randall Cunningham. Maybe that's a little bit too old for the folks, right? So let's go Vince Young. Maybe that's a little bit too old for the folks. How about Colin Kaepernick, right? That's more recent. But at the end of the day, he does fit the mold of all 3 of those guys. 6'6", 230, probably runs 4, 5, and 7 steps with that long stride he has. And he's working with Bobby Petrino. And this is the 2nd season he's worked with Bobby Petrino. We saw that before, an athletic quarterback that was kind of raw, flashed in his first year, but then got that 2nd year with Bobby Petrino. It was Lamar Jackson at Louisville. So I think Taylen Green is being criminally underrated in terms of NFL draft prospect. I have him as the top quarterback prospect in the SEC. So that being the bad, I know you probably got some questions about that, but
yes,
go ahead.
Don't slow down. That is really interesting. Now remember, okay, Emory has been on top of these things before, right? Like the thing about podcasts is they last forever. Okay, so we have the audio We have the video. You can go back and check the tape. I don't care if you're more audio or video. You can check the tape. Emory was talking about Shador Sanders and Cam Ward before anybody else knew anything about them. In fact, there were times, I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I host the show and I'm thinking, should I say something to Emory? He keeps bringing up these guys at Incarnate Word and Jackson State. Nobody cares. Like, it's FCS guys. Like, well, no, he feels strong about it and he likes these guys. Well, guess what? Emory was right. I was wrong. This is crazy. I mean, why everybody in the galaxy that likes football even a little bit should have to listen to this show or watch it where Emory comes up with the top 2 quarterback prospects 4 years before everybody else. 4 years, which is just outrageous. He also was the first person to tell anybody before your favorite draft analyst said anything about Anthony Richardson. Anything. So that's what this Taylen Green reminds me of, Emory, where it feels like you're going on physical ability, potential prospect before the guy's already shown it. You're more or less projecting he's going to have a big year. He has the physical tools. And at some point midway through the year, people are going to be like, Taylen Green, Taylen Green, Taylen Green. And Emory will be the one that in July said he's the best prospect in the SEC.
Correct, Ross. You nailed it on all fronts, man. And it's funny because Jalen Hurts has been the conversation as of late. We talked about him early on the show. He was my QB2 in the 2020 class behind Burrow when no one was even thinking he could be an NFL quarterback, right? So we are always ahead of the curve. And with Taylen Green, we saw him flash at Boise State. Last year was his first year in the SEC. He put up some good numbers and was playing some really good ball. He flashed, but it's the consistency that you want to see flatline because he'll have some amazing games and throws, and then he'll have some head scratchers. So if he could flatline his consistency, therein lies the growth I expect to see from him this year in his second season working with Bobby Petrino. We're not going to speak ill of Bobby Petrino's name. This guy has put in work in developing a quarterback, and he has shown it time and time again. And if we're going to move on to
hold on a second. Let me. I want to. It's funny because two things about Taylen Green. One is I'm excited. So I've just seen highlights, but he's big, he's fast, and he's got a good arm memory.
Ross, I put a clip out there during this draft season when I was grading prospects. And I was like, well, one of the things I love about grading prospects is always getting a peek ahead of what's next to come. It was a throw against A&M where he kind of dipped underneath the pressure, stepped up in the pocket, and floated like a 45-yard loft to Isaac Tesla in perfect stride for a touchdown. It's like, this dude is crazy how that Gumby-like athleticism allows him to throw from all the different arm angles, which is why I threw out the Cunningham, the Vince Young, and the Kaepernick comparison.
I like that. Well, listen, Randall Cunningham is my favorite player ever. So if he's even a little bit like Randall Cunningham, I want to watch him. It's funny, though, when you describe him about the physical ability, a little raw, but I think he'll have a big year. I've seen a lot of people writing and saying very similar things about LaNorris Sellers from South Carolina. There's a lot of people that really seem enamored with LaNorris Sellers. I've seen things like strongest quarterback prospect I've ever seen. I've seen the Dante Culpepper comparison. So it is interesting to me that you have Taylen Green as a better prospect than Sellers. What did you see from the South Carolina Gamecock?
He's physically imposing in terms of how he's built, right? He's literally 6'3", 245. So he has that Dak Prescott build when he was at Mississippi State. He has that Donovan McNabb build, how he's just a muscular, boxy guy. I remember the McNabb commercial where he was curling, 45 pounds on each side, just like it was nothing, right? That's LaNorris Sellers. And so physically, yes. Where I like to see him grow, and this is the beauty of him being a redshirt sophomore, is the fact that this guy throws one speed, right? Everything's a fastball. You want to see him develop more touch, and you want to see him be a little bit more consistent in terms of moving off of his first read. Because when things don't happen initially with that pre-snap read that he has, he'll step up in the pocket and force pressure, and then he's so strong he gets himself out of it. So you just want to see him grow within his game, and I love that we're giving guys time to grow, right? And so the touch, the fluidity within his movements, all of those things have to really develop a little bit more so, and we'll get to see that this year. It's the same thing with Arch Manning, which is why I didn't even grade Arch Manning in terms of right now, right? He threw 95 passes last season against UT, Pan American and UL Baton Rouge, right? So like it is 95 throws, right? So at the end of the day, we got to allow him a chance to be a prospect. Now, was working for Arch, which is what I'm excited to see. This is his third year in that system. So he should hit the ground running, figuratively and literally, because he has the athleticism that's going to help ease the game. Ease him into the game more with those stable of backs that he has. And we've seen him make some throws that you can say, okay, cool. From the first time we saw him in that spring game to last year, significant improvement. So yes, there is a lot to be excited about, but if the rumors are that he's not going to come out, why waste that time to grade him? Just let him be a college quarterback until we get further notice.
So a couple things. And by the way, I think we are going to have 2 SEC episodes because I've got a lot of questions about these guys. Don't go anywhere. Got to pay some bills real quick. Good news and bad news as it relates to Labatt. The good news is the Labatt lime is delicious, and I had a bunch this weekend. The bad news is I need to buy more. But then I have more good news because I will upload that receipt and continue to rack up points for incredible exclusive merch. It's buy beer, get gear, rewards.labattusa.com. LaNorris Sellers. Emory, I can't think of that many quarterbacks that are 6'3", 245. I mean, that is thick. Right. 6'3", 245 is like
Tebow.
A tight end. Yes, like that is, you don't see many guys that thick. Like a 6'3", 225 quarterback, 230 quarterbacks thick, 245. I would like to see what this guy like really looks like. Like we're almost getting to Dan Kendra territory here.
Good call.
But that's a unique frame because even Culpepper was like 6'5".
Right.
So that's interesting as it relates to Sellers. As far as Arch Manning is concerned, the only thing I'll say about this idea that he's going to stay in school another year, if the New Orleans Saints have a really bad year and the New Orleans Saints have the number 1 overall pick, man, I think that would be tough. First of all, the Saints would do anything and everything they could under, over, and through the table to convince him to turn pro. Just from a pure business standpoint, Manning, New Orleans, his brother, his uncles, his grandfather, and you have to think that there'd be, although maybe, I don't know, maybe Arch looks at, maybe Big Archie looks at the Saints organization as not one he would think his grandson would want to go to, or maybe Cooper doesn't think it's a great fit for him, and maybe they don't think it's good for him to go back home. I don't know, but I'll just throw that out there, that I feel like if the Saints had the number 1 overall pick, that would be pretty hard for him and them to turn down, if he's even considered to be that guy.
Facts. You got to factor in all of that, right? Newman, high school, St. Charles Avenue, all that stuff, right? Like it makes a lot of sense. But we gotta let it play out. He may change his mind because again, this would be his 3rd year in college, so maybe he's tired of college already, right? And so when you look at Arch, he has definitely grown into his frame. He's a thick dude, but tall. And I feel like when we look at Sellers, and I know people draw the comparison to Anthony Richardson, but I draw the comparison there for a different reason. When you're that muscular I don't. And we're seeing it with Richardson as a pro. I feel like these guys could stand to lose about 10 to 15 pounds to get some of that fluidity and flexibility within their arms, so that way they can throw with good touch. And Richardson, being a little bit taller, had that fluidity within his arm to throw sometimes with touch more so than Sellers. I feel like Sellers is a little bit too thick. I want to see those guys lean up a little bit to be able to have the different throws and have the different change up speeds within their passes.
That is a really good point, Emory. I was talking with someone recently about baseball and how hard you throw, and like his son's like a really high. It's a former college teammate of mine whose son's a high-end baseball prospect, and you don't want to be all thick and muscle bound as to baseball and trying to throw a baseball hard. It's about you get the miles per hour from your flexibility and your mobility. The tighter you are, I had a friend, Emory, who was throwing like 94 as a baseball pitcher, put on like 20 pounds because they liked football more, and then they were throwing 90. They lost 4 miles an hour on their, which in baseball is a huge difference. So I think that that's a really interesting point, and I wonder if those guys being so muscle bound, negatively impacts their ability to put touch in the ball. Now, one of the things I love about Emory is he and I can go back and forth on this, but I'm thinking on a couple things here. Like, think about the quarterbacks, like the most jacked quarterbacks you've ever seen. Like Brady Quinn was pretty jacked. Tebow, Will Levis, none of them like were great touch passers. Like they all struggled. I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like these are some of the guys that come to mind when I think of like really yoked up, like chiseled, six-pack, like veins, the whole deal. And none of them really, like Levis doesn't have touch. Brady Quinn, I think, had a little bit more, but there might be something to that, Emory.
And I remember this being a thing with Herschel Walker during his time. He had to wear double shoulder pads because, again, he had like 0% body fat or something crazy like that because he was super muscular. It leads you to get injured a lot, and those guys that you name tend to suffer a lot of injuries. Look at Anthony Richardson right now, and so I do think you lose some of that flexibility. You kind of need that fat a little bit, you know what I'm saying? I think that's why I would rather, if you're going to be 240, I'd rather you be 6'5", but I don't want you to be 6'3", 6'2 and a half, 245 of muscle, because, even Dak Prescott, if you look at what Dak looked like at Mississippi State to Dak as a rookie to Dak in year 3, Dak leaned up, you know what I'm saying? And Dak doesn't even run anymore like that, like he used to. So I feel like there is something to guys leaning up a little bit, kind of getting that dad bod quarterback. Like you can still have some muscle.
Hey, by the way, and Emory, it's other positions too. Like two guys that jump out to me that were outstanding players until they got too muscle bound. David Boston, the receiver, who I played against, and then a former teammate of mine, LaRon Landry.
Yes.
Those guys fell so in love with muscles and having big muscles that they became worse players because they were muscle bound. They weren't as fluid and agile. Before we get to Nussmeier and Mateer, on Emory and I are just inventing this, right? On today's SEC quarterback and quarterback physique episode, Arch Manning, okay, looking at him, thicker than his uncles, way faster than his uncles, which is interesting. Is there a guy that he reminds you of right now, Emory, like an NFL guy, or because I'm trying to think, nobody comes right to mind in terms of like a guy that can be the pocket passer, but is also a bigger, thicker guy. I've seen some people say Josh Allen. I don't know if I mean, I haven't seen Arch to see if he's like that big and has that strong of an arm, but that's the comparison I've seen so far. Is there someone else maybe that Arch Manning in those limited snaps reminds you of?
Nah, this it's kind of tough because Josh Allen would make the most sense because of the height and how Arch can take off and run. Allen clearly has a stronger arm than Arch, but Arch is able to throw a little bit more touch than Allen was as a prospect coming out of Wyoming. Allen's touch still isn't quite there, but he's able to power up football like Tecmo Bowl, like from end zone to end zone, and Arch can't do that, right? But in terms of like just being the taller athlete, that it kind of makes sense because there's no one out there like that kind of comes to my mind. And it's funny because Arch is someone that is going to play well in this quarterback friendly offense with these backs, so he's going to put up numbers. It's just about whether or not Arch wants to come out this year and whatnot. This will be an evaluation I'll be willing to work on later as it comes more evident if he's going to come out.
All right, let's talk about Garrett Nussmeier at LSU. I know you watch a lot of LSU football, having grown up down there. You're very familiar with the program. I saw where Dan Orlovsky, a buddy of mine, said that he thinks Nussmeier is clearly the best quarterback in college football based on what he's seen. He pointed to some stats about sack avoidance and third downs and stuff. What have you seen from Nussmeier? Give me the Garrett Nussmeier breakdown, Emory.
And he reminds me a lot of Gardner Minshew, right? Shorter, compact guy, kind of a quick release. Is streaky because at some points in the game, you're like, okay, yeah, he's seeing it. Like the ball's coming out on time. It's coming out decisive. He hitting the receiver as soon as the receiver turns around for the football and is working. And then the next series, you'll see him take an ill-advised sack or throw the football away to avoid getting hit instead of stepping up and taking the shot and delivering the football. And that's the type of Jekyll and Hyde situation you want to see him avoid this year. He's going to put up crazy numbers again this season because LSU is a significantly better football team along the offensive line, in the backfield, and their offense. They have multiple tight ends. That's going to be out. One guy transferred in from Southeastern Louisiana who's phenomenal. So he's going to have talent. He's going to have numbers. But I disagree with Dan in terms of how he deals with pressure. I feel like Nussmeier doesn't show up in those moments and will kind of freely give the ball away. In those situations where you take a sack or you throw an ill-advised throw or you put the ball on the ground, those things he has to work on. And I know last year we talked about Shedeur Sanders and the talk was, not from us, but the talk was, oh, he's not big enough and he came in the same height as Cam Ward. Garrett Nussmeier is just under 6'1", so he's 6 feet and about 200 pounds. And he's a lean guy, like lean shoulder guy. So you worry about his stature, being able to sustain that, physicality that he's going to see at the pro level because he's playing primarily in a spread offense. And if you're going to draft a Garrett Nussmeier, you kind of want to adapt him to that. I see him more as a day two guy, but because of those reasons. And it's hard for me. One of the things I look for as a quarterback is how you handle pressure of the moment, pressure of the situation, pressure versus the defense. It's hard for me to overlook that because that's all you see at the NFL level. And that's all you see the top tier guys able to overcome.
It's interesting. The comparison I've seen several people make for him is Tony Romo, who's about 6'1", and had some of those. Romo was streaky too, and Romo was not afraid to put the ball in harm's way at times also. I want to make sure we get to the last guy who's coming in from Washington State to Oklahoma. Still weird that Oklahoma's SEC, but John Mateer, the quarterback who lit it up at Washington State. Seems like everybody does.
Right, and he's someone that kind of compares more favorably, in my opinion, to Tony Romo. Very good athlete, will buy time in the pocket, scramble around, does some off-platform throws that you like to see. You could even make a case for Baker Mayfield, right, in terms of how he compares physically and what he does. Did a great job at Washington State. He's coming into a really good situation at Oklahoma. They have a tailback in Jaden Ott. We'll probably talk about on our third SEC show, right? We get through these prospects. But there's a lot to like about Mateer. I like when guys stay at the program to kind of elevate that program, like we're seeing a Sam Levitt do at Arizona State. But he's going to Oklahoma. He's going to be in a better setup, better situation. So I want to see if he can kind of curtail a little bit of those wow plays and be more boring. And the wow plays are going to always be there. If he can consistently do the boring, then they were talking about a guy that elevates his stock. And, to put a ball on these quarterbacks, don't even forget about Zach Calzada at Kentucky, by way of Incarnate Word, by way of Texas A&M. Calzada was phenomenal at Incarnate Word the last couple of seasons, and now he's back in the SEC. Backup quarterback Jacob Zeno was stellar at UAB. He's at A&M. He's not going to see the field primarily at behind Marcel Reed, but someone that's going to probably get an invite to a camp or end up in another league.
Love it. Hey, and next week, how about Caden Proctor from Bama, Harold Perkins? I mean, these guys have been good players in the SEC for years. We'll get to all of the other prospects in the SEC next week. For now, the keg is kicked. We're all tapped out.
Thanks for tuning in to College Draft. Make sure to also check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Even Money, and Fantasy Feast, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.